Ukraine is resisting U.S. and Russian pressure to commit to attending peace talks Monday until Russia submits its plan to end the war. U.S. Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal visited President Zelensky Friday in Kyiv and warned of a new sanctions bill being prepared against Moscow. President Trump, meanwhile, says he will know in a couple of weeks whether Russian President Vladimir Putin wants to end the war.
We're going to find out whether or not he's tapping us along or not. And if he is, we'll respond a little bit differently, but it'll take about a week and a half, 2 weeks. I have gotten to see things that I was very surprised at. Rockets being shot into cities like Kiev during a negotiation that I felt was maybe very close to ending. And I don't like being surprised. So I'm very disappointed in that way.
Joining me now, Tom Nichols, staff writer with The Atlantic, professor emeritus of national security affairs at the U.S. Naval War College and instructor at the Harvard Extension School. And his latest headline says, Trump's tirades aren't swaying Putin. Tom, welcome. You really think it's going to take him a week and a half or so to figure out if he believes that Putin really wants to end the war? Because I'm curious your read on where Monday's negotiation stands. And when you see Senators Graham and Blumenthal teaming up to visit Kyiv, do you expect the strongest action against Putin to come from Congress instead of the White House?
Well, first, it's important to remember that the president has this kind of verbal tick when he's stumped or trying to buy time. And it's always 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks
Delay.
or within a few. Yeah, I mean, it's a meaningless time schedule. It's just something he says. That's a way of saying, I don't want to talk about this. It's embarrassing. I'll figure it out in 2 weeks and, hope that people pay attention to something else. As to Graham and Blumenthal, bipartisan delegation showing up in Kyiv. It would be great, as Hemingway wrote, wouldn't it be pretty to think so? But, without the president, without his backing, sanctions and other measures against Moscow aren't going to go very far. It's great to see U.S. senators in Kyiv showing support for the Ukrainians. But, I think I'd almost rather see Senator Graham at the White House telling President Trump, no, Putin doesn't want peace. No, you don't have to wait 2 weeks. And yes, there are things you can do right now.
A brief exchange erupted on social media Tuesday when President Trump said if it wasn't for him, lots of really bad things would have happened to Russia, adding that Putin is, quote, playing with fire. That was followed by former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev saying, quote, I only know of one really bad thing, World War III. I hope Trump understands this. Is this a threat from Russia, or is it a reminder to Trump? Because he often says he wants to prevent World War III.
Yeah, Dmitry Medvedev, the former president, he's kind of become Russia's chief. Technically, he's the deputy chairman of the National Security Council there. But what he is he's Russia's chief internet troll. And he says stuff like this all the time about, nuking London and taking out Europe and just lots of crazy stuff. So I'm not too worried about that part of it. The bigger problem is that the president just doesn't understand or doesn't care that this war is not just some real estate transaction. He seems to still believe that if he just calls Putin and says, you do this, I do that, we both make money, everything's going to be fine. That's not how it works. And again, the president's tweet or post is kind of like his 2 weeks tick. He says it's very common for him in many instances to say, if only I had been around, bad things wouldn't have happened. I mean, it's really a great position to say, there's all kinds of bad things in the world. And if I had been around, they wouldn't have happened. It's just a kind of a go-to for him, but I wouldn't be too concerned about Medvedev. He says stuff like this all the time.
Interesting, former president then becoming internet troll. So your colleague Thomas Wright wrote about Trump's recent move to slash the National Security Council, saying Trump had been gunning for the NSC since 2019 when two staffers filed a whistleblower complaint about his call with Zelensky, and that got him impeached. Is Trump still carrying a grudge despite, finishing out his first term without significant penalty and getting elected to a second?
Okay, nobody carries a grudge like Donald Trump, for one thing. Not only is he carrying a grudge, but he carries grudges institutionally. He is mad about being impeached and being defeated, even though he says he wasn't. He was beaten in 2020. And he not only blames the NSC, he blames Zelensky, he blames the whole nation of Ukraine, he blames the Democratic Party, he blames everybody. He's still carrying a grudge, and this is really shooting himself in the foot because he needs the NSC. The problem is that people like the president and the people around him don't like organizations like the NSC because they're full of experts. They're full of people who work the problem, and that doesn't go very well when he says, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And they say, well, you can do whatever you want, Mr. President, but there are problems with that. Here are some costs. Here are some things that you have to worry about. This president doesn't want to hear any of that stuff. And the NSC exists to tell him stuff like that. That's what it's there for. It's the president's kind of personal foreign policy, interagency, support staff, and think tank all rolled into one, supposedly or normally headed by a national security advisor who gives him the best advice, handles all these contending institutions and opinions. None of that is happening because what the president really wants is just tell me that the things I want to do are good and don't give me any guff about any problems or costs.
Okay. Tom Nichols, always good to talk to you, my friend. Come see us soon. Thank you.